All right, friends, we are already to chapter 6, which is almost halfway through when we're finished with this, almost halfway through the book, which is kind of crazy. And chapter 6 is called A Peanut Butter Sandwich. I told you to be careful, scolded Keith when his parents had gone to dress and Ralph had crawled down his arm into his hand. It wasn't my fault the door blew shut. Ralph jumped from the hand to the bedspread. Though Keith was a friendly boy, even a generous one, Ralph still did not like the feel of his skin against his paws. It must be terrible to go through life without fur. And such a nuisance to have to wear clothes that have to be washed and drip dried. Ralph knew all about drip drying. Many of the drops of water from shirts and slips that he had dodged going in and out of a mouse hole. You didn't have to stay out so long, Keith pointed out. What's the use of having a motorcycle if you can't go tearing around staying out late? Ralph asked. You don't have a motorcycle, said Keith. I just let you use mine. You better be careful. I like that motorcycle and I don't want anything to happen to it. I'll take care of it, promised Ralph. I don't want anything to happen to it either. It's going to be harder to get a chance to ride it now that my mother has seen you, said Keith. She's a terribly good housekeeper, and she's sure to complain to the management. Speaking of breakfast, you people are too tidy, complained Ralph. I'm not getting enough to eat around here. You don't even leave me any crumbs. I never thought of it, said Keith. What would you like to eat? Ralph was astounded. This was the first time in his life that anyone asked him what he would like to eat. It had always been a question of what he could get his paws on. You mean have a choice? He asked. Well, sure, said the boy. All I have to do is order it and we go down to breakfast and then bring you some up. Ralph had to take time to think. After a diet of graham crackers and provided by and little bits of candy and occasional peanut or apple core left by little children, or toast and crumbs left by an adult who had ordered breakfast sent to room service, the possibility of choosing his own meal was almost too much. I know what I'd like, said Ralph, but I don't know what you call it. Once, some people said they were almost out of money and stayed in their rooms. They had 4 children, all of them were hungry, and they couldn't afford to go out to the dining room, so they had some bread and spread it with something brown out of a jar and put some more bread on top of that. They whispered all the time they were eating because they didn't want the maid or the bellboy to know they were having their meal in the room. After they got down in their hands, and they picked every single crumb off the carpet so no one would guess that they had eaten there. It smelled so good, like peanuts, only better. Can you guess what it's called? Think about the chapter title. The boy laughed. It was a peanut butter sandwich. Sure, I'll bring you a peanut butter sandwich. Or part of one. I'll eat part of it myself. It'll be kind of a funny breakfast, but I won't mind that. Where will you leave it? Asked Ralph. Keith thought for a minute. Where do you live? In the knothole under the window. No kidding. That's a hole I poked my finger in last night. I'll say you did. Scared me out of my year's growth. Nobody's ever guessed it's a mouse hole because it's a knot hole instead of a chewed hole. I tell you what, I'll bring up part of the peanut butter sandwich and poke it through the knot hole. Ooh, just like room service. Ralph could not have been more pleased. What about the motorcycle, he asked. Where are you going to leave that? In my suitcase, I guess. Come on, pleaded Ralph. Have a heart. Leave it out someplace while you're gone for the day. You're supposed to be in your mouse hole. Asleep, not riding around in the daytime where people can see you. Well, gee whiz, I can't a fellow even look at it? I bet you like to look at the big motorcycle yourself. Well, yes, I do. Well, I'll leave it back under the bed, like I said, but you promise not to ride it until after dark. Scout's honor. Ralph jumped off the bed and ran off to the knothole. Ralph's home was furnished with a clutter of things people drop on the floor of a hotel room. Bits of Kleenex, hair. His mother was always planning to straighten it out, but she never got around to it. She was always too busy fussing and worrying. Now, as Ralph expected, she was dividing rye crisp crumbs among his squeaky bunch of little brothers and sisters while she waited to scold him. "Ralph, if I have told you once, I have told you 1,000 times," she began. "Guess what?" interrupted Ralph in an attempt to change the subject. "Somebody in room 215 is going to bring us a real peanut butter sandwich." "Ralph!" cried his frightened mother. "You haven't been associating with people." He's just a boy," said Ralph. "He wouldn't hurt us. He likes mice." "But he's a person," said his mother. "That doesn't mean he has to be bad," said Ralph. "Just like Pop used to say, people shouldn't say all mice are timid just because some mice are, or that all mice play when the cat's away, because just some do." "Just the same, Ralph," said his mother, "I do wish you would be more careful who you associate with. I am so afraid you're going to fall in with the wrong sort of friends." "I'm growing up," said Ralph. "I'm getting too old to hang out around a mouse nest all the time. I want to go out and see the world. I want to go down on the ground floor and see the kitchen, the dining room, the storage room, and the garbage cans out back." "Oh, Ralph, not the ground floor, not all the way down there. You're not old enough." "Yes, I am," said Ralph. "There's no telling what you might run into down there. Mouse traps, cats, poison. Why not by the garbage cans? Out by the garbage cans, you might even be seen by an owl." "I don't care," said Ralph. "Someday I'm going downstairs." "But think of all the owls, Ralph," his mother said. "We moved into the hotel because of the owls. It was after your Uncle Leroy disappeared and his bones were found in an owl pellet." The mother's mouse's plea was interrupted by the sound of Keith returning to room 215. "Now you'll see," said Ralph to his mother as he waited for the feast from his friend. Sure enough, Keith came to the knothole. "Psst," he whispered. "Here it is. The waitress thought I was crazy ordering a peanut butter sandwich along with cornflakes for breakfast, but here it is." He stuffed half the sandwich, a bit at a time, into the hole where Ralph seized the pieces and pulled them all the way through. "Listen, we're going to be gone most of the day. The dining room is packing us a picnic lunch, and we're going to drive along some of the back roads into the old mining towns." "Thanks a lot," Ralph managed to say with his mouth watering. "Have fun." "See tonight," said Keith. "Have a good day's sleep." Ralph's mother could not help being impressed by the sight of that peanut butter sandwich. "Just like room service," she marveled. "Why, it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It even has butter in it." "I told you he would bring it." After sharing his feast with his squeaky little brothers and sisters, all of whom had trouble with the peanut butter sticking to their teeth, Ralph curled up on the heap of shredded Kleenex and took a good long nap. When he awoke refreshed, his first thought was of the motorcycle. He wondered if Keith really had remembered to leave it under the bed. He yawned and stretched and left by way of the knothole. Room 215 was just as Ralph had last seen it. The bed had not been made, and there were no fresh towels by the wash basin. Ralph ducked under the sheets and blankets that had tumbled off one side of the bed, and there, in the dim light, he caught a gleam of chromium pipes. Keith had trusted him after all. He walked across the carpet and took hold of the hand grips once more. He felt just right. They felt just right in his paws, and he longed to be off, speeding around the spots of the carpet. But a promise was a promise. Keith had kept his promise about the peanut butter sandwich, and Ralph would keep his promise about not riding the motorcycle in the daytime. He tried to satisfy himself by walking around the motorcycle, admiring all the designs of the machine. Ralph was lost in admiration and daydreams of speed and power when suddenly the door opened and the maid entered. It was too late to make a dash for the mouse hole. The maid stripped the blankets and sheets from the bed, shedding unwelcome light on Ralph and the motorcycle. Her feet in white sneakers moved lightly as she gathered up sheets and pillowcases and towels and dropped them with a soft plop beside the open door. The next thing Ralph knew, he was hearing familiar and dreaded footsteps coming down the hall, steps he had learned to fear when he was a tiny mouse. It was the head housekeeper, the woman who was in charge of all the maids in the hotel. He recognized her steps and recognized her shoes. Nothing was ever cleaned enough for the head housekeeper, and Ralph's whole family lived in dread lest to uncover the mouse hole. Now he held his breath, hoping she would go down the hall, but no, she stepped into room 215. Good morning, Marjorie, the housekeeper spoke crisply to the maid. Be sure to clean room 215 and 216 very thoroughly this morning. There has been a complaint from the guests. They suspect mice. Yes, ma'am, said the maid. Look behind all the drawers and in the corners of the closets. Please report any evidence of mice, and be sure to vacuum under the beds. You have been getting very careless lately. With that, she walked back down the hallway. Old grouch, muttered the maid, as she reached into the hall for something that produced a sound that struck terror in Ralph's heart. It was the clang of the vacuum cleaner attachments banging together. Chapter 7 is called The Vacuum Cleaner. I'm wondering if you think this is going to be another adventure or a real problem for Ralph. Do you think Keith and his family might come home while they're vacuuming? And if not, do you think that Ralph is going to be okay? Chapter 7 coming at you next.